Tier 1, Chapter 11. So what do you think? Do you think that technology was a good improvement? It's certainly important. And in Chapter 11, we're going to learn more about what Eric does for a living.
Chapter 11. Both Eric and sleep have eluded me for the last few days. Though Eric's absence is explainable, I have racked my brain for potential areas of stress to rationalize my insomnia, to no avail. The dreams have become inevitable, and even when I am lucky enough to be sleeping deeply, my body has embraced a pattern of waking regardless, my heart hammering for no apparent reason. I am afraid of something, that much is obvious, but what? Could it simply be the unknown? The fact that Eric is doing something I don't understand and it is taking him away from me more frequently? That night, I suggest to Eric that it may be helpful for me to go into the lab the next day. Perhaps, if I see everything with my own eyes, my subconscious could be persuaded to release the fear. Giving the boys more information on Eric's research couldn't hurt either. He agrees, and we set a time for the afternoon. It occurs to me that I haven't stepped foot in his lab for over a year. A pang of guilt hits my stomach, making me extremely aware of the lack of interest I have shown in his work prior to this discovery. Much to my surprise, frustration follows the guilt like a tethered pet. I am upset at Eric, I realize. Upset that he did something that could potentially change our trajectory. Without even realizing it, I have created an entire picture of what our life will look like. Eric will do research during the week. I will work with patients. Tal and Bentley will grow up and be successful in their paths. We will chug along happily forever. The end. How have I become so complacent, so content to sit in this comfort zone? Our life has been completely predictable, but now I don't know what to expect. Of course, I recognize it's ridiculous to be frustrated. How could I possibly hold negative feelings toward Eric for being too good at his job? It's completely irrational. I know change is always supposed to be difficult and transformative. I hear people talk about it regularly. It's been theoretical for me up to this point. Pairing, having kids, those were changes I wanted and expected, which meant they weren't really changes, more like planned adjustments. This is truly unexpected, and I haven't quite settled into acceptance yet. The next morning, I wake to find Eric already gone. He doesn't typically have to go in early, but every once in a while it does happen. Usually he gives me some notice. I pull my arms high above my head, reveling in the release I feel in my lower back and neck as I stretch. The lack of solid sleep and contorted sleeping positions resulting from it is taking a toll on my spine. During last night's predicted restlessness, I scrolled through some old files to pass the time. Using the same rationale of unknowns causing stress, I wondered if Eric was right, that the dreams have been stemming from a desire to know more about my mom. I didn't necessarily find anything new, but revisiting details about her life gave me comfort, and I was eventually able to rest. Though it seemed to increase my positive affect in the moment, the downward cycle of exhaustion and irritability is already in full swing, and I don't expect that I can rely on reminiscing to solve it. I force myself to leave the coziness of the bed so I can wake the boys and get breakfast going. We have a lot to get through before we head to the lab. While they are eating, I casually mention the need to finish our reinforcement tasks before embarking on our laboratory outing. This week, the boys have been focusing on coding and reading comprehension. Coding is never the issue, but reading has always been hit and miss with Tal. I am already steeling myself for the pushback. I hate it, Tal groans. The lab? Like Dad's lab? Bentley asks excitedly. Tal, it won't take too long, and yes, Bent, Dad's lab. What will we get to see there? Tal asks. I can tell he is gauging whether completing his reading assignment is worth it. It's not optional, I sing, giving him a knowing smile. It takes an eternity for them to finish. Seems almost purposeful. Tal is making goofy faces, and Bentley can't stop laughing long enough to swallow. Hearing their laughter, Tal's lower chuckle and Bentley's higher, out-of-control giggle, makes me begin to laugh, my annoyance nearly forgotten. It won't be long before Tal is over funny faces. I give them a few more minutes to be silly. Eventually, I nonchalantly place myself between them so that Bent can focus. After clearing their dishes, the boys are quick to put on comfortable clothes, and we wipe down the kitchen together. I'm pleased with how quickly we are able to move on to our tasks. The boys each take turns coding commands into their trial sensors, making mistakes, and troubleshooting along the way. They will likely graduate to something more challenging soon, but this is appropriate for now. Their faces light up each time their sensors display colors or make various sounds in response to their commands. I sigh, dreading the quickly approaching moment where I will have to remind Tal about his reading. "Tal," Bentley says as if reading my mind, "can I read with you today?" "Sure," he shrugs, tapping his sensor to pull up the assignment. Bent shoots me a sideways glance, and I swear I see him wink. We arrive at the lab that afternoon to Eric standing in the entrance waiting to greet us. He looks a little disheveled, but his grin stretches from ear to ear. Ushering us in, he scans our sensors and we follow him down a lengthy, barren hall. We pass door after door, finally reaching the right one. Eric pushes it open, allowing us to enter ahead of him. Researchers are abuzz, transferring samples in and out of the coolers, washing petri dishes, and measuring samples in test tubes. Eric leads us past them to a table near the back. He has his own samples set out, along with a microscope. I cringe as Bent comes dangerously close to knocking it off the counter. We get them situated on the step stool, and then back off, allowing them to experiment with the magnifying dials. "I missed you this morning," I whisper, finally having a moment to stand still. "I know. So sorry. I didn't want to wake you. I had a couple of things I needed to take care of so I could be available to show you guys around." He shifts his attention back to Tal and Bentley. "Boys, do you know what you're looking at?" They both stare at him blankly. "I'll give you a hint. It is a result of the research I have been doing," he prods, sitting down on a stool next to them. "Well, you are studying genes," answers Tal. "Yep," Eric answers. "Any idea what could be in the samples?" "Not really," Tal says, and Bentley shakes his head. "Well, let me see if I can explain it." He picks up a small vial. "They each contain a sample of DNA. Not even a full DNA sample, but a specific piece of DNA that we have selected for. Obtaining that section is an incredibly difficult process, but once we have isolated the piece that we want, it comes here." He motions to a petri dish in the center of the table, picks it up, and places it gently under the microscope. "Knowing that, look in there, Bent, and tell me what you see." Bentley gets up on the stool and lowers his eye to the viewfinder. "It looks like a big piece of snot," he says, disgusted, and I snort in surprise. "That's a great way to describe it," Eric chuckles. "Tal, do you want to see?" Bentley moves over to allow his brother an opportunity to observe. "These are tumor cells," Eric continues. "Tumors are just normal cells in the body that, for some reason, decided to continue growing and changing in ways that harm the body's healthy tissues or just take up too much space. Our goal was to find specific DNA pieces that, when paired with other variations of the same piece, could begin to shut off these tumor cells." "Snot cells," Bentley corrects. "Yes, of course, snot cells," Eric repeats. "So, did you find it?" Tal asks. "We think so," Eric answers excitedly. "We don't know all the ins and outs of how this is going to look long term, but so far, it seems like the match we created is continuing to do its job." "Guys, isn't this amazing? Your dad is the first one in hundreds of years to find something like this," I say excitedly. "That long?" Tal seems skeptical. "Yes, that long," I answer, ruffling his hair. Eric reaches out for another petri dish and slides it in, replacing the previous sample under the microscope. The boys immediately scramble to get the first look. "This is a battle," Eric says, and both of the boys are immediately entranced. "The matched DNA pieces are taking down the snot cell." I stand there and watch them, their eyes widening and heads straining forward to catch a glimpse of the new samples Eric shows them. In this moment, seeing them engaged and growing together, my fear dissipates. For the important things, there aren't any unknowns here.